So uncivilized.
A new VR game came out last weekend called The Burst, and it is exactly the kind of fast-paced, combat-focused, yet story-driven adventure that I bought this VR headset for in the first place. However, at the time of its launch, it's far from perfect due to some technical issues. But the core foundation of this game is so fun and interesting to me that once these issues are patched, I'll have no problem recommending this game. You can tell this was made by a small but passionate team of developers because the mechanics at work here are genuinely refreshing, but there's definitely that layer of jank that you usually find in these ambitious indie VR games. I don't think the floor has loaded in. But what exactly makes this game so fun and noteworthy? Well, that's the question I asked my virtual bros on Patreon last month to see if they could guess, and well, I want you to take a guess too. So what do you think it is that makes this game stand out? Is it A, the Spider-Man-like grappling powers, B, a full parkour system similar to Stride, C, a well-voice-acted narrative story, or D, remarkably seamless vehicle combat? Go ahead, pick your answer. Did you pick one? Well, you're actually wrong because it's not a single one of those. It's all of them. That's right, in this Mad Max-inspired world, you'll be using your grapple wire gloves to swing through the air or yank enemy weapons out of their hands, but you also have the ability to climb up ledges, slide to gain momentum, and even wall run on certain surfaces. And while the parkour and combat are definitely the best part, the decent voice acting in varied locations are what keep the game exciting throughout its runtime.
Today, a new racer rises up to the challenge! Here comes... What was your name, bud?
What is my name?
For fuck's sake. Hornet.
Who?
Hornet!
And that's not to mention the boss fights and vehicle combat sections that truly put your VR skills to the test. This isn't just some stationary wave shooter. No. This game is all about the movement. From swinging through the air while shooting enemies down below, to the shootouts while speeding through the desert on a motorbike. This game is thrilling from start to finish. Now, it's definitely not without its flaws, like the most apparent being the severely lacking graphics and occasional physics jank, but there are actually a few things here that even AAA VR games don't get right. So join me in this video as I show you some of the awesome things you'll see and do in The Burst. And this fire feels really... hey, I didn't see you there. But now that you're here, let me quickly take 30 seconds to improve your VR experience. You see, if you own a Quest headset like me, then you know this default head strap sucks. But you know what sucks even more? Spending $70 on a head strap that doesn't even have a battery in it and that breaks half the time. I'm speaking from experience here. That's why anytime someone asks me what head strap they should buy, I almost always recommend the Kiwi design. For a fraction of the price, which is discounted even further when you use the promo code in the description, you are getting just as high quality accessories, if not better, than the official Meta ones. I say that because none of my Kiwi design head straps have ever broken, and I can't say the same for my Meta ones. Plus, the Kiwi design head strap has these foam cushions along the back and top strap that makes a huge difference when it comes to comfort over long play sessions. Now, of course, this is a sponsored segment, so I'm sure it can be hard for you to just take my word, but as you can see, I've quite tried a few head straps from a couple different brands, and Kiwi Design have never let me down. So, thank you again to them for sponsoring my content. I'm so glad to have sponsors that align with my overall mission here on the channel, which is improving your VR experience. You will never catch me doing a Manscaped ad on this channel. You're welcome. Now back to the video. Okay, so technically at the beginning of the game, there's this little prologue section that introduces you to all the main mechanics of the game, but it kind of spoils all the cool things I want to show you, so for now, we're just going to pretend that that doesn't exist and skip to the coolest title sequence I've ever seen in VR. Whoa! Dude, this is Helldivers! You play as codename Hornet.
Hornet! Hornet!
a former lieutenant of the United Coalition of Earth, or the UCE for short. Your mission? Restore the UCE's control over this post-apocalyptic wasteland. You see, this planet is essentially a prison for the galaxy's most dangerous convicts, and here the inhabitants are expected to provide planetary resources to the UCE in exchange for food and supplies, via these cool space elevators. But a few factions have decided to rebel against these terms and are trying to take over the planet for themselves. So it's up to you to take out these rebel leaders and restore order to this planet full of murderous psychos. Hey guys, are you friendly? They were not. But that was not my fault. They shot first. But clearly, that won't be easy. The wasteland is just as unforgiving as the criminals who live here. You'll constantly be on the lookout for supplies to keep you going, but luckily, being a special agent has its perks. One such perk being this, a weapon with rechargeable magazines.
That one, with the rechargeable magazines. Convenient. Especially since I'm in the middle of a shitty desert.
Throughout your journey, you might even find upgrades for it, if you're smart enough to figure out how to open them, unlike me. That's a bomb. No? Is that not a bomb? I feel like I'm supposed to open this. Oh, but this gun is honestly pretty weak. It's more like your backup for when you run out of ammo with your other guns, the ones you've stolen out of enemy hands or from their corpses. And that's where the combat is the most fun. Grabbing onto an enemy weapon and yanking it out of their hands just to catch it and shoot them in the face genuinely doesn't get old. I can't tell you how many times I said, "That was so cool," after finishing a fight. That was so cool. That's so cool. And that's mostly thanks to these grapple gloves. These are such a huge part of the game's identity, and it's pretty clear why. When this simple act of picking something up is this fun, I'm reminded of why VR motion controls are so special in the first place. It's basically like really cool Spider-Man powers. Look. It like shoots those wires out, and then you yank it towards you. I love the way it wraps around stuff though. Look at that. Here's what I think is so cool about these. When playing any VR game with motion controls, you more often than not have to pick up objects by physically reaching out and grabbing them. But if this is the only way to grab an item, it can be incredibly frustrating if an item is ever slightly out of reach, or worse, lower than your actual floor. Most VR games solve this issue by giving you some kind of telekinetic force powers, which are definitely cool the first couple times you use them, but soon they become a forgettable mechanic that almost every VR game uses as a shortcut for convenience, whether it makes sense for the game or not. Some games try to justify this with superpowers or a gadget like the gravity gloves in Half-Life Alyx, but even then, it's rarely utilized as an actually fun gameplay mechanic. It's really just a solution to the unique problem that VR motion controls present, and in my opinion, not a very immersive one. So what, am I saying that simply adding a few physical wires that shoot out of your hands and attach to whatever you're grabbing suddenly makes the same actions feel more realistic and tangible? Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. That's so cool. If I had to sum up why this works so well in one word, it would be feedback. The visual feedback of seeing the wires actually wrap around the object that you're trying to manipulate, in addition to the haptics, makes this actually feel like you're reaching out and grabbing it, and that makes the follow-up action of yanking it towards you feel even more natural. Now, despite how much I love these things, grappling isn't even my favorite way to get around in this game. I know, surprising, right? That's because this is my new favorite way to travel in VR. Oh. I've been saying for a while that we need more VR games where you utilize vehicles. I feel like the majority of immersive VR vehicles only exist in dedicated racing games where you're meant to play seated, or games where your character never leaves the vehicle. And for years, most games that had you standing and walking around wouldn't include seated vehicles as well. I guess the transition from your character standing to sitting was just too awkward and jarring. Some games got around this with a fade to black or an instant teleport, but both of these are completely immersion breaking. So how does the burst solve this issue and just allow you to get on a vehicle? Well, just like this. Watch how seamless this is. Ready? You grab the handlebar and you put yourself on top. And then to get off, you just do the exact same thing. And it's just so fluid. There's no like teleporting onto it, fade to black, transition, nothing. You can even grab the seat and put yourself on top. Now that might not seem super impressive to you, but compared to the AAA Quest 3 launch title Asgard's Wrath 2, where you simply click a button to mount your ride, it is a night and day difference when it comes to making these virtual objects feel real and immersive. Physically grabbing the seat or the handlebars to put yourself on top in the position that you want is incredibly realistic to how it feels to get on a bike in real life. It's so much better than just clicking a thumbstick to teleport into a seated position. You can also do this. Yeah. The burst also nails the feeling of steering with motion controls, another aspect which felt really lacking in Asgard's Wrath 2. The bike feels really responsive yet properly heavy at the same time. And I think it's the suspension that goes a long way to selling that weight. Woo! Is it just me or does that look like a ramp? Yeah! Now these bikes aren't perfect, sometimes they bounce around too much or get stuck in annoying ways or send you flying off of them. Oh no. Get back on the bike! I'm back on. That was crazy. The first section that requires you to drive and shoot simultaneously, I was literally stuck on for days. Gosh. I don't understand. They gotta fix the difficulty on this. I think one of the issues here is that the controls just take a few minutes to get comfortable with, because I mean, it's not every day that you have to fire a gun at moving targets and manually reload while somehow steering a motorbike at the same time. It takes genuine skill to do all that successfully, but the game doesn't give you the time to work up to that, as these first enemies you encounter are ridiculously accurate and can kill you in under 5 seconds. I really think all they'd have to do to fix this frustrating section and others that might be similar is make the enemies less accurate, especially when you're taking evasive actions like swerving around on the bike. Luckily, the game is long enough that by the end you feel like you have mastered those controls, and that's where it starts to feel really seamless. The other thing that can make the harder difficulty sections in this game especially frustrating is that reloading doesn't always work perfectly. I've noticed that whenever you're moving at high speeds, sometimes magazines won't insert properly, or you'll have to rack the slide twice for it to register. This applies to on-foot combat as well, like when sprinting or sliding, which is such a shame because the game encourages you to be constantly moving during combat.
Better make it count.
Now, I'm also really tempted to tell you more about the story, like how apparently you can make choices throughout the game that will affect your ending. But I don't want to spoil too much, and I also haven't finished the game yet, so I can't really say how much replay value you'll get out of those additional endings. But I am glad to know that I at least have a solid reason to replay the game. This looks like something. Hang on. So it's a very linear game, but there's little outcroppings like this that you can just explore completely optionally. Supplies. So hopefully by now I've piqued your interest in The Burst, because I definitely think it's worth checking out if you're looking for a more linear action game with an emphasis on movement. However, as much as I've praised the game so far, I do have to temper your expectations a little. Aside from the random difficulty spikes, my playthrough did suffer from several visual glitches, such as textures not loading in or popping in super late. The pop-in I don't mind as much because the game manages to have almost 0 loading screens, which is super immersive and refreshing for a standalone VR game. However, The missing textures, muted colors, low poly character design, and terrible lighting makes this genuinely one of the ugliest games I've played in VR. This is what I mean with like the lighting. The gun is kind of dark right here, so I was like, oh, I'll bring it into the light. Oh wait, it doesn't. That's not actually a light source, so there are rare moments of beauty, like cruising through the desert at night, or this level that reminds me of a scene from Blade Runner 2049. Oh, this feels like Blade Runner, dude. But most of these moments are overshadowed by the number of times you get stuck in an area, unable to progress, because the lever you were supposed to pull blended into the environment too much. Yeah, that happened a couple times. And while I did find the voice acting to be pretty solid, any sense of immersion breaks when you see what the characters actually look like. It's just not good. The animations always look bad too. For the most part, they accomplish what they need to do, but yeah, I would say the graphics are very impressionistic in the sense that they communicate the general idea of something rather than represent it perfectly. That's a nicer way of saying the humans barely look human, but it's good enough in most cases. Now keep in mind, I did play a pre-release build of the game, so hopefully some, if not all of these issues will be fixed in updates shortly after launch. But hopefully me telling you about these issues beforehand will make them easier to overlook if you do want to try this game out for yourself right now. And I kind of hope you do. I've never heard of Go Rapid Studio before, so if this is their first game, I'm super excited to see what they have in store next. The foundations of the burst, from the movement to the vehicle to the combat, are really amazing and demonstrate an impressive range of solid VR mechanics. So I hope they get the resources they need to create something a little more polished and visually pleasing next time around. Dude, that was so cool. For now though, thank you so much for watching this far into the video. If you liked this video and want to see more like it, you should definitely consider subscribing here on YouTube for absolutely free, or you can join my Patreon to support me further and gain access to special perks, like voting on what types of videos I make, or having your name credited at the end of every video, like these awesome people here. Thank you all a ton. Also, shout out to Kiwi Design for supporting my content as well. I wasn't kidding earlier, I really want to steer clear of doing sponsorships that aren't relevant to VR, both for your sake and mine. That's all for now. I'm Virtual Bro, and as always, I don't know what to say here. Man, these outros are always so awkward. Like, how about that weather?